Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Okay. The appearance day of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We all know what's missing in the world. You could say there's so many things missing. The real thing that's missing is love. Which is Krishna and is Bhakti, is love. The thing everyone's crying for and everyone's looking for and everyone's striving for and shopping for and marrying for and reproducing for and whatever we do. We're doing it for love. We're doing it in the search for love. And the success is? Some people go, yes, okay. Let's call a spade a spade. It's not a success story. Up hands who've had their happy ever after. So it's not the case. And yet, there is a happy ever after. And that happy ever after is found in, specifically? More specifically. Whose appearance day is it? Shri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He is the personification of love. He came to give it and came to taste it. The embodiment, the final word, the sum total, the absolute truth in love is Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So what's the problem? If Lord Chaitanya has come to give and is the embodiment of love, and everybody's looking for it, not getting it, what's the problem? Maya. Quick excuse. Blame Maya always. It's all her fault. That's not the direction I'm going to go. What's the problem? What's the gap in between?
Ignorance. False ego. Lack of faith. Sense enjoyment.
It's a little more hard hitting. We are it. We are the problem. We are the problem. Because there we are singing Jai Sachinanda Gaura Hari. And yet there's the world suffering out there. What are we doing? What are we doing?
We want to be as Lord Chaitanya.
Yes, we want to be, but yet we haven't achieved it yet. There's a very simple question that once got asked of Chaitanya Prabhu, and he's the king of questions and answers. And but this one really stuck me when somebody asked him, why is Prabhupada not more famous? And he said, because of us. And it really struck me, and I got excited by it, actually. It could look like a damning statement, but it's not. It's because of us, because we haven't yet done what we're meant to do. We haven't yet done what we're meant to do. We're meant to be that bridge, be that gap between Lord Chaitanya's free distributing love and the world which is suffering for want of it. During the last week or so, I'm not sure who else is listening to the GBC SPT series of talks on the glorification of Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita. And there's like 65, 70 speakers. They're all very, very nice. I listened to as many as I could. And I have little snippets floating in my brain from them. And one of them was, because Lord Chaitanya saw that no one was qualified, absolutely no one was qualified, so his decision was, give to everybody. Because if you look for qualification, he won't find it. It's just not there. It's Kali Yuga, it just doesn't exist. So give to everybody. So this, I said, okay, so it is meant for everybody. That's why we kind of say, oh, well, there's people in ignorance or Maya, the demons. No, Mahaprabhu gave for everybody. It's just up to us to find the bridge, make the link, be the yoga, be the connection that bridges Mahaprabhu's love to the world. And so my little presentation is addressing this issue of how we can become a better link. Each one of us, regardless of any position or status or title or anything, each one of us, having had contact with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, can be that flow, that viaduct to bring Mahaprabhu's mercy to another suffering person. But just before we go into it, I couldn't help, of course, I want to very quickly do a little bit of a basic, put on my teacher's hat, and use a little of the material from the wonderful Sutta Prabhu, who has created this very nice little summary of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And so, just briefly, I won't ask how many people have read Chaitanya Charitamrita, and those who have read it, well, how recently did we read it? And I know my own hand would go up in guilt. So, as that is our main book, that is our prime access to Lord Chaitanya and his philosophy and his mood and his teachings, we'll have a quick fly through the book, Chaitanya Charitamrita, as created by His Grace Sutta Prabhu. And he goes through, there's 12 subsections and 4 sections in each of the Adi, Madhya and Antya-lila. And the first one is invocation. So the first, that's a little hard to see. The first 12 chapters establishes the tattva. It creates who Lord Chaitanya is, who his prime followers are, and the disciple succession. And this is so important. We have to hear the science. The book's about ras, and love is about ras. We want to share it, we want to taste it. But if you do that without a foundation of tattva, without sambandha, you will be lost. So the first 12 chapters, and devotees get a bit intimidated because it's quite technical, but it's essential. So then the next section, 13 and 14, we actually hear about the appearance, the advent of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the house of Mother Sachi. And often in this section especially, Krishnadas Kaviraj constantly says, I'm only mentioning in brief because this has already been discussed in detail by Vrindavan Das Thakur in Chaitanya Bhagavat. So 2 chapters on Lord Chaitanya's appearance. Then there's 2 chapters on education, chapters 15 and 16. What age did Lord Chaitanya start his education? 5, yeah. He started education at 5. And then what age did he open his first school at? 11. So he'd finished it all and set up by 11 he had his own school. Such was the recognition and prowess of Nimai Pandit, an unbeatable scholar. So a couple of years in education. Then the last chapter, 17, is the transformation. And this chapter, if you want to do a nectar churning of Mahaprabhu's pastimes, this chapter is a condensed version of nearly half of the Chaitanya Bhagavat. Krishnadas Kaviraj flies through so many things, just mentions them. Lord Chaitanya's initiation, his pastimes, and starting the Sankirtan movement in Navadvip, the Kirtans in Srivas Pandit's house, Chan Kazi, the famous Jagamadai pastime. It's not in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's only given 2 texts. It's all detailed in Chaitanya Bhagavat. And leading up to Mahaprabhu's final, taking sannyas from Keshava Abharaji Maharaj. So a dramatic chapter dealing with the transformation of Mahaprabhu from Nimai the scholar to Nimai the Bhakta, Nimai the devotee. So then Madhya Lila is the first 6 chapters, renunciation. But one thing to note about Chaitanya Charitamrita, and this is something His Holiness Kanamba Kanamers points out, Krishnadas Kaviraj wrote it in a very, 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 very particular way. He repeats himself a number of times. At least 4 times he's repeating some points. Like here, in the beginning of Madhya Lila, you have 2 chapters dedicated to summarizing the Madhya and Antya Lila. Then when you come to the end of the Madhya Lila, he summarizes again. When he starts a chapter, he gives 1 or 2 texts summarizing in the chapter, and he comes to the end of the chapter, he summarizes again. Why did he do this? Is this like running out of material to speak about? Definitely not. Why did he do that? Yeah, no. No. It's important? Well, that's true. But specifically, as an author, he's an expert author. This way, you can't mess with this book. If you try to mess with this book, and people like to mess with books, and the famous, most messed up book is? No, not Bhagavad Gita. No, one of our books, Mahabharata, there's no one knows. Even they tried to commit a critical edition, it's almost impossible. So, it's impossible to mess with this book. Krishnadas Kaviraj wrote it so expertly. So he summarizes in Madhya 1 and 2, and then we hear of Mahaprabhu's initial traveling to Puri and his first famous and most wonderful conversion of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Then in Madhya 7 to 15, propagation. Mahaprabhu travels, takes off and preaches. That's what sannyasa is about. Travel and preach. So Mahaprabhu's travels to South India, and then his travels around Varanasi, Ramakeli, and Vrindavan. Then 16 to 18, aspirations. So 16 to 18 is when we come to the pinnacle in this period of the Ratha Yatras. And we hear the ecstatic Ratha Yatras, which were always going on, Ratha Yatras, Mahaprabhu, but he brought them to another whole level. And one way, what way did he bring it to another level? By? No, the kirtan was there. Well, close. By the organization. He organized it. And anybody's been to most Ratha Yatras in ISKCON, especially the London one, it's just chaos. Getting the kirtans organized chaos, and getting the dancing organized is impossible. I've tried repeatedly for the last 25 years. Mahaprabhu organized it. The singers, the musicians, and the drummers, and the dancers, and and then he, of course, added his bhav, and it went to another whole level because of organization. So in the Ratha Yatra, we hear this ecstatic intensity of Mahaprabhu's love. Then more on organization, 19 to 25. And his organization was preaching to Srila Sanatana Goswami and Srila Rupa Goswami, who he then commissioned to create the literature to ground the movement. Then appreciation. So the next 2 sections both are summary of the chapters 1 to 13, where Mahaprabhu now stays in Puri and he's still engaging a lot with devotees, and he's doing 2 things. He's appreciating those who have done nicely, and he's correcting those who have not done nicely. So again, demonstrating, teaching. So people know what bhakti is, what is good and what is not good. There's actually 2 types of anarthas. One is to not know what is not favorable. You're meant to know what is not favorable, and you have to follow it as well as knowing what is favorable. So he appreciates many devotees like, of course, Haridas Thakur, Raghunath Das Goswami, Rupa Goswami, and then he corrects. Who does he correct? Gopinath Parnay, as we just heard, for his misdealings. Who else? Choda Haridas, of course, one of the most poignant and painful one. The Bengali writer Bhagavanacharya, who's this Bengali poet who wanted to come with his questionable writings. That's not in this section, but that's in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. Yeah, he corrects him. Jagannatha gets correct and chastised. Yes. Ramachandra Puri's in here for his nonsense of finding faults. So a lot of correction and appreciations. Then 14 to 19, intoxication. Mahaprabhu then enters a different state, a different mode, his own internal purpose to really taste Radha Bhav, the taste of Radharani's separation from Krishna. he goes deeply into that for many years. And then finally, of course, he finishes with chapter 20, the Shishastakam, the only writings Mahaprabhu gave us. So, if you want to, and it's nice when we're trying to approach a book, and this is our most important book to approach, that we have some structure in our mind. It helps us go deeper, go into it. And a very nice summary from Sutta Prabhu. Also, then, a little bit on Mahaprabhu's life at a glance. Mahaprabhu lived for how many years? 48. And of the 48 years, it was split into? Well, I have two first. 24, yeah. 24 years as a householder, and this is mostly discussed in the Adi Lila, and 24 years as a sannyas. It's quite easy to remember. I'm terrible in numbers, but it's quite easy. 24, and you can have even a 6, 6, 12, but 24, 24. And then sannyas life is split into two sections. His traveling and preaching, 24 to 30, 6 years in his traveling and preaching, and that's the Majja Lila discusses that. And then 12 years in Puri, based in Puri when he stopped his traveling. And that's what the Antya Lila presents. And then even in the Antya Lila, in those 18. In those 18 years, the first 6 where he's still active, associating with the devotees, and then the last 12, he goes into a deeper mood and only associates really with those in his inner circles, Sri Damodar Goswami, and Govinda, and Sankara Pandit, like that. So, again, a very simple little overview of our Mahaprabhu's life. Now, we have 4 main books. But what is our first book? Bhagavad Gita. And our next book? Bhagavatam. And our next book? Chaitanya Charitamrita. The Nectar Devotion then would say would come after. Yeah, well, here you have 3. What is the Bhagavad Gita? The Bhagavad Gita is? Introduction. Sambandha. Who's talking? So Bhagavad Gita is Krishna's words, the word of God. You're going to put it in Krishna terms. This is the word of God. Then Srimad Bhagavatam is the?
Word about God.
What? A little more. What did you say, Jamastami? Okay, but I'm looking. It's not so much the word of God. It's It's the activities. His activities. So, flowing with this, the Bhagavad Gita is his speaking. Bhagavatam, his activities. What is the Chaitanya Charitamrita? Yes. His psychology, his mood, his mind. The inner mind of God. And even in those first 12 chapters, quite technical, we hear about Krishna's lamenting. I came, I spoke, I gave the Bhagavad Gita, I said a band, I told them what to do, and they're not doing it. Krishna is lamenting. Why aren't they doing what I told them? We don't like doing that. That's why we're here. That's why we sign up for the material world. We personify not doing what we're told. So, Krishna said, okay, then I have to have another approach. I have to come and show them how to do it and how much fun it is and what they're missing out. So then he comes. And then later at Mahaprabhu, especially those last chapters, then the mentality and the mood and the absorption and the complete dissolvement of one's own ego in the love of Radha and Krishna. Really into the mind of God. I mean, super esoteric and super intimate. Cars and devotees. I know myself, I always say I'm not a driver. I don't like cars. They're a necessary evil to get to one place to the other place. But they are what we need. But cars and devotees, apart from driving in our preaching and our business, what else could a car and a devotee have in common? Well, to make a car work, it has to have fuel, engine, and a driver. Yes. Okay, that comes by the fuel. Thank you very much. But it has to have the engine in the car, it has to have fuel in the engine, it has to have the driver. So, just as a car needs a well-functioning engine, fuel, and someone to steer it, our spiritual life also needs an engine, which can be said, it needs organization and structure. If you don't have structure, it's all over the place. You need fuel. You need spiritual inspiration. We constantly, devotees, we're always talking about inspire. I need to be inspired. And we need proper steering, which is culture and ethos. And if we don't have the culture, then our inspiration can go off in all sorts of strange directions, with all sorts of different ideas. And it's a real reality Krishna's Kavach constantly discusses. Those who don't follow this, they will create some, we read last night, some worship of their imagination. A nice expression. The worship of their imagination. I think they're worshipping, it's just their imagination, unless you're following. And of course, organization structure has to be there. If there's no body, there's no procedures, and there's no structure, then we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here because that's how we've all come. So, going back to my first point, I want to therefore meditate, and focus on this culture and ethos. The reason, the link, the bridge between Lord Chaitanya's love and the world is our culture and our ethos. When Chaitanya Charitamrita responded to that devotee by saying, the reason Prabhupada's not famous is us. He said, because yes, we don't yet represent Prabhupada as he is. Again, a strong statement, a challenging statement, but it's an exciting statement, because it means we've so much to do. And so much to do that doesn't require waiting on anything for me to get or see. Just right now, right here, am I embodying Srila Prabhupada? And we all, because we love talking about Srila Prabhupada and his leelas and his pastimes. Why? Because he was so caring and so sweet and so Krishna conscious and so exciting to be around. Why am I not like that? And how can, obviously, and I can't be like that, but why am I not aspiring for it? And that was his answer, because we don't yet represent Prabhupada properly. The world has not yet been exposed to Prabhupada's mercy, and therefore Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we want to be more like Prabhupada, and we want to be more like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And this is something I gave a couple of years ago, but in this context, I kind of do a quickly summary of it again, is that we don't seem to emphasize enough our culture and ethos. And because we often lament this in ISKCON, we says we've got the topmost philosophy. When you read Chaitanya Charitamrita, I mean, from the very beginning, from really solid tattva explaining who you are and who the universe is, it's just nowhere else to be found. What to speak when you go to the end of Chaitanya Charitamrita, and this, just overwhelming, and it's so overwhelming, Krishna's Kavach warns us, please don't be too overwhelmed. It's hard to understand. You can't understand it. Just listen with faith. Just listen with faith, and it will do you good. But it's also Mahaprabhu's demonstrating what it means to love, that real final point of love. So we have this topmost philosophy, but yet here we are, little old ISKCON, especially, God bless, little old Belgium, where we're crying for years in the wilderness to be recognized as some sort of anything really, apart from an ASBL or an ESBL. The fact that we are a spiritual, religious movement, its mission is to help the world, but that just ain't there. That's just not. And why? It's because we have work to do. We have work to do, okay, as an organization, but primarily we have work to do as individuals in increasing our culture. Because Mahaprabhu preached primarily by culture. That's the primary he preached. And I want to quickly then go through a few demonstrations of how Mahaprabhu in his preaching, we don't put the spotlight on this cultural element. Because, and here's a little, and I got this from Kripa Moipu, again, another miscellaneous. What do the following personalities all have in common? Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Prakashananda Sarasvati, Chan Kazi. Anybody spot any common thread between those three personalities yet? Well versed. They were
not really devotees yet.
Don't read devotees yet? Okay. Digvijay?
We're famous persons.
Famous persons, yes. These are Digvijay, Vallabha Bhatt, Rupa Sanat Goswamis, prime ministers of the country, Pete's sake, chief of the Tattvas. These are all big personalities. they were all serious personalities. These weren't your average. Mahaprabhu, and this is who he preached in. Mahaprabhu always shot up. He always shot big. He always went. And particularly with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he was probably the biggest here. Because when Mahaprabhu converted him, which he did straight away, he was the first one, as soon as he went to Puri, got Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. That became spread throughout all India. When Mahaprabhu went to Prakshananda Sarasvati knew about it. And that's in Varanasi, which was quite some distance away. And we didn't have our magical phones, internet. But word got there. Word got there because this was such a big thing. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya has converted to Vaishnavism. And Srila Mahaprabhu's point is, and that this is what Mahaprabhu did, but in ISKCON we tend to do the opposite. We tend to have a status issue, and we preach maybe to people who we see as lower than us, or simpler than us, or lesser than us. Instead of taking on the challenge of preaching to people that we know are higher. We know them more recognized. We know them more established. We shy away from that. And we've created a culture to shy away from that. And maybe that's one of the reasons our movement, because we know if we get a big personality, we know it's huge, right? But to do it, you can't walk in and go, here's the Bhagavad Gita. Whack, you're not the body. Read this. Here's the bead bag. Here's the razor. Shave you up. Which we know ISKCON did for the first 20, 30 years. We've mellowed a little bit, but still it's in the ethos. Shave them up and get them chanting. And we've constricted our preaching by our stereotypeness in many ways in our culture. So Mahaprabhu didn't. I mean, Mahaprabhu was outrageous when he went preaching, and what he did and who he preached for. And so in the activities, and these preaching, I summarize it that a good preacher must be considerate and sensitive. Something devotees are not that famous for. We kind of tend to be inconsiderate and pretty insensitive. We come in like bulldozers because we're convinced about what we are. He's also affectionate and respectful. Again, most people are striving for affection, care, and respect. We're patient and listens. Whoa. Not a Hare Krishna thing. We don't listen, we speak. We get out there and tell the people, you're going to listen to us because we've got the absolute truth and you don't. You just keep quiet and listen to us. I often tell people I start talking to and they ask me a question, I says, can I give you a plug, please? So as soon as you want me to stop, just go. Because you don't put a plug in Hare Krishna's mouth, he'll keep going. So, Mahaprabhu, he patient and listens. And humble and relevant. Of course, this we know. A devotee has to be humbled, but also has to be relevant. Relevant, and we know this is so important in our age. And this is a big discussion in our movement that goes on about how to be relevant and not be considered bogus and wishy-washy and watering down, but yet connect to the world of the people. And Mahaprabhu did that. And of course, humble. So, these four things I got principally from these four famous exchanges. This is, which one? This is Chankasi. This is the Chankasi. This is when Nimai was very young, the first one. Mahaprabhu talks to Chankasi. Then, this is, the first one wasn't Chankasi. So, no. Sorry. It's my second page. The first one was the Digvijaya, yes, Keshav Kashmiri. The second one is Chankasi. This is then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And finally, Prakashananda Sarasvati. Yes. So, these are the four I want to look at briefly. Then a little bit from Srila Prabhupada's and its purport. E Panchatattva Rupa Shri Krishna Tanya Krishna Nama Premadiya Vivas Kailadanya. Shri Krishna Tanya Mahaprabhu and his associates of the Panchatattva distributed the holy name of the Lord to invoke love of Godhead throughout the universe. And thus the entire universe was thankful. Purport by his divine grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Here it is said that Lord Chaitanya made the entire universe thankful to him for propagating the Sankirtan movement with his associates. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had already sanctified the entire universe by his presence 500 years ago, and therefore anyone who attempts to serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sincerely by following in his footsteps and following the instructions of the Acharyas will successfully be able to preach the holy names of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra all over the universe. Therefore, under the instruction of Lord Chaitanya and with the blessings of his associates. There should be no discrimination in this matter. But people in all parts of the world should be trained to preach and given sannyas, so that the cult of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement will expand boundlessly. We do not care about criticism of fools. We shall go on with our work and simply depend on the blessings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates, the Panchatattva. And in our movement, we tend to do completely the opposite. Who's our most busy preachers? No, not names. But we tend to do what? Who's the ones on the street doing the books the most? The youngest of hoodies. You're in the temple 2 weeks, on the street, out you go. Be out there, be the voice of the Hare Krishna movement, meet the people, and they're going, okay, what's it about? I don't really know, but here, I've been told to do this. So it worked for a while, and we don't want to begrudge any. We know all service is eternal, and it's been but is it the most intelligent strategically? No. Preaching should be done by the most trained, by the most mature, to attract people. So train to preach. Lord Chaitanya in the Digvijay. So in this pastime, the Digvijay was wandering throughout India, and he's not like Sarvabhaumacharya. He's not a famous philosopher. He's a more very scholarly, very academic. And so he was preaching around, and this was a big sporting activity in time to become known as the Digvijay, the winner of all directions. So he came to, because to Navadvip have heard about Nimai Pandit, and he went and he approached Nimai Pandit to challenge him. And I remember, what was Nimai Pandit's first response? I have heard. No, I think he's willing to take it on. But when he first approached him, it was in the middle of the day, surrounded by all his students. So Nimai Pandit said, let's do it later, when it's quiet. So when I defeat you, not everyone's going to see. And we all know defeat is one thing, but defeat in public. And as for devotees, I think that's why some devotees don't like leading kirtan or singing songs, thinking, what if I get it wrong? Everybody's watching and listening to me. We get embarrassed to do things in public because it's getting it wrong is one thing. Getting it wrong in view of others is, we fear. And so in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, there's a nice comment by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. The Lord is the perfect example of proper conduct and is always respectful to the people of this world. Therefore, he began to contemplate how miserable the world-renowned scholar Digvijay would become when defeated. He thought, if I defeated the conceited Digvijay in public, he would feel great misery at heart. Moreover, if he were defeated, he would be finished. He would certainly be harassed. All his wealth, elephants, horses, and other possessions would be forcibly taken away by others, and the Brahman would merge in lamentation. Keeping all these considerations in mind, I will have to defeat the Digvijay in a secluded place. So Mahaprabhu's first consideration, I'm going to defeat him, but I don't want him to be hurt. Very, very, very considerate. Always, before we go in straight away thinking, I know the truth. And I think I've said this repeatedly in many classes, but it's the point here. The truth without compassion is no longer the, yes, you're the one here, is no longer the truth. So the truth without compassion, okay, the truth without consideration, the truth without sensitivity, the truth without thinking about the person. You think you're speaking the truth, but you're not, because you're stripping it from the culture of how to present it. And that's what we do too quickly. We're very strong in philosophy. And a little more on this. The Lord said, yes, I am known as a teacher of grammarian, but factually I cannot impress my students with grammatical knowledge, nor can they understand me very well. Oh, so he's speaking now to the Digvijay. My dear sir, whereas you are a very learned scholar in all sorts of scriptures and very much experienced in composing poetry, I am only a boy, a new student and nothing more. Therefore, I desire to hear your skill in composing poetry. We could hear this if you would mercifully describe the glories of Mother Ganga. Now, this is something Mahaprabhu does repeatedly as well. What's he doing first? He's listening. You speak. You speak. Let me hear from you. And that way then you can as opposed to like as devotees, we got this huge, endless box of medicines to give people. But like somebody comes and they're sick, wow, let me just pick any old medicine and just shove it out the throat. And then, medicine, applying, doctors, very expert. You have to know the symptoms of the patient. What's wrong with them? What do they need? So to find someone's symptoms, you have to listen to them and find out. So Mahaprabhu always starts off, when somebody asks us a question, not always, but nearly always, the best thing is to respond with another question. Ask back, what do you think? And that way, you first, and that does a lot of things. One, you hear from them, and then, of course, they appreciate it. So then, of course, we hear that they meet at the night time, and Keshava Kashmiri recites 100 verses in glories of Mother Ganga, and then after he's finished, Lord Chaitanya picks up one little point. Yeah, 64 specifically, and picks up, and the Digvijay, literally, he said, the jaw's on the floor. He said he cited this verse like a whirlwind, and he caught it exactly. For us, we know unless we record it and write it down, we know like literally it goes in one ear and out the other. So he defeated the Keshava Kashmiri, and that night the Keshava Kashmiri, feeling very downtrodden, being very saddened, he had a special dream. His worshipful goddess Sarasvati appeared in a dream and told him, "Don't worry, you've been defeated by God." So. Soften his wounded ego. Okay, that's one person we can defeat by God. And then so from the Chaitanya Bhagavad again, the Lord's behavior was so gentle that whoever was defeated by him felt no distress. After defeating each of the teachers in Navadvip, the Lord satisfied them with his sweet behavior. Even after defeating someone, the Lord did not insult them, and thus everyone was pleased with him. Such were the pastimes of the Lord. So again, repeated, the Lord's very expert dealing. And I always like this story from Govinda Dasi. She was one of the early, got associated with Prabhupada very much early in 68, 69. Her and Gaura Sundarpur, her husband, travelled with Prabhupada as a secretary and servant. And she tells in her stories that she saw Prabhupada many times cut. Prabhupada would cut. Very sharp, very deep. As soon as he cut it, what did he do? He stitched up the cut in such a way that you didn't even know it was there, and you felt healthier for it. Because usually a doctor has to cut to do something, right? To get some growth out or something. You have to cut to get something out. But Prabhupada's cut was so expert that he'd cut and stitch you in such a way that you always felt the better for it. And instantly as well. Instantly. So expert was. And ISKCON, again, we tend to be good at the cut. And then, Haribo. I'll see you in 6 months. And we leave each other with these cuts. And sorry, it's a sad reality. There's devotees walking around with cuts all over them. Maybe not their physical body, but their emotional body. Because of, Rinda Surupu tells his point too. He said, I joined ISKCON not because of the devotees, in spite of the devotees. Because they were so heavy. He said they're heavy. It's because Prabhupada was there. Prabhupada just so again, no disrespect, and everything is in the eternal bank accounts. But yeah, and devotees know this. They were like heavy. Okay, so moving on quickly. Lord Chaitanya and the Chand Kazi, affectionate and respectful. So the Chand Kazi goes, we hear, and stops the kirtan that's been growing in popularity because Mahaprabhu's since he's come back from Gaya. And then the Chand Kazi sends guards to break the mridanga and tell the kirtan cannot be. Mahaprabhu, of course, does not like this and creates, Prabhupada says, the first civil disobedience movement and brings these mass crowds to the house of Chand Kazi. When they meet, we have this. When the Kazi came, his head bowed down. The Lord gave him proper respect and his seat. The Lord was angry, by the way. He was, but still, proper respect and his seat, appropriate by Srila Prabhupada. Some of the men in Chaitanya's movement, some of the men in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's civil disobedience movement were agitated because they could not control their minds. But the Lord was thoroughly peaceful, sober, and unagitated. Therefore, when the Kazi came down to see him, the Lord offered him proper respect and a seat because he was a respectable government officer. Thus the Lord taught us by his personal behavior. In pushing on our Sankirtan movement of Krishna consciousness, we might have to face difficult days, but we should always follow in the footsteps of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and do the needful according to the time and circumstance. Okay, and that's one of Prabhupada's Mahavakis, that last statement. Doing things to time and circumstance. What is the context? The absolute truth, the truth never changes. The context always changes. And therefore the truth, like the point, without compassion is no longer the truth. The truth without giving its right context and out examining the situation will become, again, also not the truth, or become something that's unattractive or stagnant or do the opposite of what we want to achieve. So the point being, the Chandkazi was the governor of this of Bengal and a bigger area, and Mahaprabhu always offered him respect. And it's interesting because in the Chaitanya Bhagavat you really hear the details of the devotees stomping the garden and knocking down the fence and stomping in all his flowers and burn down the house. And Mahaprabhu, of course, so Mahaprabhu kind of calmed his devotees down and requested Chandkazi to come. And we hear they had a very nice debate then, discussion on scriptures. Mahaprabhu spoke also on the scriptures of the Chandkazi. And you can summarize this point that people respect. You have to give it if you want it. If you're not giving it, if you're not respecting somebody, and again, when our head's full of, I know the absolute truth and you're in Maya, no, where's the respect in that? I'm up, you're down. I'm here to save you. And so many things that, again, culturally we have embedded in our society, which is not Vaishnava, it's not the Vaishnava approach. You could say it is Vaishnava, but Kanishta Vaishnava. And Kanishta Vaishnava is not how our movement will grow. It's not how we're going to expand, because Kanishta is only worried about himself. All dressed up, all saying the right things, but in essence it's all about themselves still. And that's not the Vaishnava. So at least in the Madhyam platform, we consider other. So if you want to give, you want to get respect, if you want, especially you go to preach to someone, you want them to respect Prabhupada's movement, you want to respect the book, you want to respect the holy name, you've got to give it to them first. And people have to see it and feel it. And the Chandkazi did. So again, I'm skirming over the pastimes here just to make these key points. Lord Chaitanya Sarvabhaumacharya, patient and listens. Now, so we hear Mahaprabhu, he takes sannyas and he has that first little diversion back to Navadvip to see Mother Sachi. He then travels to Jagannath Puri. And on the way to Jagannath Puri, we have the breaking of his sannyas danda, and he gets upset with Nityananda Prabhu, and then he goes on his own. And in the temple, of course, here is his goal to see Lord Jagannath. And we hear, of course, he falls in ecstasy. At the time, thankfully, the great philosopher, Sarvabhaumacharya, was there, and immediately recognized the symptom of Mahaprabhu's body. This is not an ordinary person. And the guards went to beat Mahaprabhu, because Mahaprabhu went to embrace him. The guards went to beat him. But Sarvabhaumacharya could see, he knew the signs, there's symptoms. So he brings this strange, unknown mendicant to his house, and then finally the devotees, when they catch up with Mahaprabhu, they come to the house of Sarvabhaumacharya. And they bring him around in his ecstasy, as always we hear, by chanting into his ear. And I still like, there's no way to beat it than the way they do it in the Nimai of Nadi movie. Haribol. Haribol. I like our Haribol tends to be different. Our Haribol is with that, but in there, so gently softening it. But we don't know. Both were there. We hear loud as well. So then Lord Chaitanya sees, what has he done? He's such a young man. He's so beautiful, and he's 24, and he's taking sannyas. This is not good. This is not good. So Lord, he said, to save you, you have to hear from me. I have to preach to you. And Lord Chaitanya, Sarvabhaumacharya says a few things actually. One, he says, this is crazy. You're sannyas. You're not going to survive. That's not very nice to hear, is it? Usually somebody told you, you've just taken sannyas, you're finished. You're just taking Brahmacharya ashram, you're finished. Taking Grihastha ashram, you're finished. whatever the ashram is, the austerities that come with it, we can often tend to say, oh, it's not. So that would obviously agitate her mind. Was Lord Chaitanya agitated? No. He also said, by the way, you've taken sannyas in the Bharati line. That's a lower sannyas. That's a bad sannyas. I'll give you proper sannyas. What? And he says something else too that's also a little. He was very restless. He was very restless. Because what is this? Well, of course, the emphasis more on the study comes with Prakshananda, but this, he definitely says, you're so young. What is this? So a lot of things that would obviously agitate us. But Lord Chaitanya, so he then says, let me talk to you Vedanta Sutra. So Mahaprabhu goes, yes, you please tell me. And so they sit, and Sarvabhauma Acharya speaks to him for 7 days. At the end of the 7 days, Sarvabhauma Acharya says, you're hearing again and again, yet you keep silent. I can't understand what is actually within your mind. Now, if I say something, any of us, we say something to somebody that's maybe not nice, can we usually tell that they're not happy with us? Usually it's, even if they don't open their mouth, and usually we do, of course. Usually we promptly to tell someone. But even if they're sitting there going, and of course, I should have my phone handy. Yeah, I'm listening. Yeah. It's, even for us, it's pretty obvious when somebody's not happy with what we say. So here's Sarvabhauma Acharya, who would be so much more expert, so much more sharp on the science of physiognomy, I think is the word. You read someone's face, their body, their gestures, their whole, the whole science of someone's posture. We can see it, and Sarvabhauma Acharya would have, and still, Sarvabhauma could read nothing. He couldn't tell anything. And Prabhupada then, I think this is from the purport, thus for 7 days continually, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu listened to Vedanta philosophy expounded by Sarvabhauma Acharya. However, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not say anything and did not indicate whether it was right or wrong. He simply sat there and listened. Now, listening, again, is not a mechanical thing. It's not a simple thing to do. If you're going to listen to somebody, what should you not be doing?
Talking.
Well, not talking, but thinking of something else. Yeah, you should not be creating your responses. Okay. Argument 2, argument 3. Then you're not listening. Then you're not actually listening. And people see it and feel that. They see it and feel it, and then therefore they can see, and that you actually haven't listened. Mahaprabhu actually listened. And we had to see this in the context that Mahaprabhu, what his prime mission was to get rid of people speaking this philosophy. And that's what, Krishnadas Kaviraj repeatedly says throughout the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So much he's here to destroy impersonalism and Mayavad. It's very consistent. Prakshana is the one pastime that's repeated at length twice, is the discussion with Prakshana Sarasvati, because it's so important how he defeats the Mayavad philosophy. It's so important Mahaprabhu gets rid of this philosophy so people can start to taste the love of God. Because you don't believe in God, how can you taste the nectar of his name and his beauty? But to listen, he really listened, and Sarvabhauma couldn't tell. So then after Sarvabhauma said, speak, Lord Chaitanya said, you are very merciful to me. And therefore I think it is my duty to obey your order. I am a fool, and consequently I do not study the Vedanta Sutra. I am just trying to hear it from you because you have ordered me. Only for the sake of executing the duties of the renounced order of sannyas do I listen. Unfortunately, I cannot in the least understand the meaning you are presenting. in comes the what do you call it? The knockout fist, yes. So, Mahaprabhu, again, and this is where devotees, we struggle in trying to be nice and respectful and listen and give people respect and give them time. Then do we not just take apart? No, we still do it. How to do both seems to be a real problem for us. And some devotees tend to forget about the listen, respect, just knock them out. And some devotees thinking, don't just listen and just go along with it. and then they never actually end with speaking the philosophy at all. So we tend to have a gravity towards either school in ISKCON, and obviously getting Father Mahaprabhu's example is good. Be in such an unagitated mind, a peaceful mind, you genuinely listen and then genuinely deliver the Siddhanta. But because you've listened so nicely, you've bought their respect. And even you're going to be cutting, you're going to destroy their ideas, you've got it. So and we know Syamananda does, because Mahaprabhu patient and listens. 7 days. 7 days? 7 minutes, folks. We're like, if somebody's speaking something we don't like for 7 minutes, we're like, 7 days of doing it. How patient can that be? So again, we can't do it. Like so many, even his preaching we can't follow. We couldn't do that. But let's remember it and think he listened for 7 days with not creating pre-opinions in his mind to somebody speaking complete nonsense. And then immediately he had Syamanandacharya's heart. So Mahaprabhu spoke the philosophy, he had bought Syamanandacharya, the biggest conversion, straight up. And then this last one, Prakshanana Sarasvati. So Mahaprabhu's traveling on the way to Vrindavan. He goes through Varanasi and he meets various devotees who says, these devotees are criticizing you like anything. Now, if we hear devotees are criticizing us, again, what does it do to us? Again, we get agitated. We don't like, and especially we love this expression, who's speaking behind my back? It seems to be like the biggest dagger to our heart. Somebody, at least say it to my face. Well, don't do that either. But when we hear behind their back, we see. But this is what they're doing. Mahaprabhu's hearing, and not just one, but all these sannyasis, and including this very famous sannyasi, Prakshanana Sarasvati, was speaking behind his back. He's just a sentimentalist. He's just dancing. He's not a sannyasi. He's bogus. I mean, heavy stuff. Heavy, heavy, heavy. And it got around. So it wasn't, they didn't need, again, if there are WhatsApps and things to get around. This got around. So Mahaprabhu on the way to Vrindavan, he doesn't interrupt his meditation. He's going to Vrindavan eventually, which, by the way, took Mahaprabhu so many things. This whole getting to Vrindavan is a whole pastime too. But on the way back, he's invited to the house of a Brahmin where the sannyasis are meeting. And we hear he sits down in the place where they wash their feet. And then the sannyasis all look and see, what's he doing there? And of course, they didn't know him, but what did they see? The effulgence, yes. And I'll come back to this. This is a very interesting part. And then, as you see in the picture, Mahaprabhu's raising his hand. And then Prakshanana Sarasvati takes his hand and lifts him and helps Mahaprabhu step up. Again, very small but very important thing, to create in the person a little sukriti, a little something that helps them hear. Mahaprabhu does all these little techniques, little tactics, very subtle, very nice, that helps him before he delivers his message to help them get ready to hear the message. Which then they do. They sit around and they listen to Mahaprabhu's speaking the real Vedanta Sutra. And again, here's a little from Prabhupada. Prakshanana Sarasvati, however, caught Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally by the hand and seated him with great respect in the midst of the assembly. The respectful behavior of Prakshanana Sarasvati towards Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very much to be appreciated. Such behavior is calculated to be agyata sukriti, or pious activities that one executes unknowingly. Thus, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very tactfully gave Prakshanana Sarasvati an opportunity to advance in agyata sukriti, so in the future he might actually become a Vaishnava sannyas. So tactics are required. Again, we have this thing in not just in ISKCON, but everywhere, the word politics. We've embedded it with this like disgust. I don't do politics. But it's not, that doesn't need to be so, because politics and tactics are it's where you use your intelligence to think. Look at the person and see, what is it I can do? Now, of course, if it's always to come out on top, then that's not nice. But using policies and tactics, Mahaprabhu was tactical in his approach. It's required to be effective, to be efficient in our mission. And so we hear Mahaprabhu preach to them, and they immediately, all these sannyasis come to Mahaprabhu, and they after hearing him speak, they bow down, and then, of course, like everything, everything ends in glorious, glorious kirtan. And this is an overriding point. Mahaprabhu, he was famous for Nimai Pandit, the scholar, very famous, and he does scholarly things, but the conclusion always is the devotion. This is a constant. Scholar, it's good to know, and it's good to be learned, but the goal is to taste, to taste particularly the chanting of the holy name of Lord Krishna. I'll skip this. And then here's the picture. We see them. Mahaprabhu became so famous in Varanasi that wherever he went, word spread that everybody followed him. I also like this story from Rancho Prabhu's book, When the Sun Shines. And he tells a story about when they first went to Ireland in Dublin in 1974. They went on Harinam. 6, 7 devotees. And they went back to the temple. There was like 50 people behind them. And I go, that doesn't happen nowadays. What went wrong? Literally, they didn't have to do leaflets or on the internet or posters. Just go out and Harinam. People follow behind them. So maybe the Harinams are that more static or empowered, I don't know. But Mahaprabhu, so that's what we want. Just by, without having any exertion, just by our behavior and our preaching, people will come to us in the masses. And this is what we dream of. And then I added this little brief on Lord Chaitanya in the Tattvavadis. When Lord Chaitanya is traveling to South India, he meets the Tattvavadis. When the Tattvavadi Vaishnavas first saw Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they considered him a Mayavadi sannyasi. And Tattvavadis are Vaishnavas, so they didn't criticism. Therefore, they did not talk to him. Later, after seeing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in ecstatic love, they were struck with wonder. Then, considering him a Vaishnava, they gave him a nice reception. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could understand that the Tattvavadis were very proud of their Vaishnavism. He therefore smiled. That's a point too. We often hear devotees smile at the guests. Even if you're faking it, smile. And began to speak to them. Considering them very proud, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began his discussion. Now, he knew they were proud. He could see it very clear. But the chief Acharya of the Tattvavadis was very learned in the revealed scriptures. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu humbly questioned him. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, I do not know very well the aim of life and how to achieve it. Please tell me of the best ideal for humanity and how to attain it. Again, he started with a question. You speak. You talk. So, I mean, a consistent point, listen first and humbly approach. And I do not know. Not that I know. And somebody asks a question, and I know. And people ask, especially in groups, I find this dynamic. If somebody asks you a question, and you immediately come in with all the answers, you might be saying the complete truth, but you lose your audience. You lose them. Because we're so pleased. It comes out. People pick up and they're so pleased that I know all the right answers. And that's not what attracts people. It's not. People are attracted by humility, a humble approach. You speak. What do you think? Oh, you want to know what I think? Oh, okay. And then you touch people's hearts. So it's Mahaprabhu did this consistently. And so in this point about being relevant, Mahaprabhu was very, very, very innovative. Very interesting what he did. So with the Keshav Kashmiri, Mahaprabhu, to reach out to him, what did he demonstrate? He demonstrated? More specific than learned. So Keshav Kashmiri recited 100 verses like a whirlwind. Lord Chaitanya immediately picked up a word and repeated it. What's that called? Yeah, and what there's a certain, we know this term. It's not coming to my mind. We all, somebody's got perfect recollection. Shrutidar. And for a Brahmin, this ability to read something once and remember it was a big thing, because everybody knew a Brahmin should be able to do that. But as Kali was progressing, we've so lost it. Shrutidar, because Keshav Kashmiri was famous Brahmin. So Mahaprabhu demonstrated Shrutidar. You're impressed with this? I'll show you it. I'll pick one word out of your 6 verse, and the Keshav Kashmiri was like, wow, that's impressive. He buys him, he hooks him. With the Chand Kazi, how did Lord Chaitanya hook the Chand Kazi?
Created a report.
That comes later. Who was the Chand Kazi? In the Quran. He was the governor. And what do people in governor, they're in charge, right? So they're in charge of people. And so how did Mahaprabhu get the respect?
Control the crowd.
They control the crowd. Controlling people. What does every politician desire to do? Control the crowd. Say what and do what. Get the people behind you. Then you're powerful. So Lord Chaitanya showed And the description, and Vrindavan Thakur says, in every street, in every village, in every alley, in every house, everywhere there was like lights could be seen. There was such, no one could see the beginning and the end of the crowd. Impressive. And how quick did Mahaprabhu take it? In one day. In one day. I think it was the day after, or that afternoon maybe, even, when they gave Mahaprabhu, Chandkazi gave this order, stop the Sankirtan. Mahaprabhu said, oh, just you watch. And that night, there's a crowd so big. So demonstrated his power over people. And he bought the Chandkazi. Sarvabhauma. Yes, learned and saintly nature too. Sarvabhauma appreciated his saintly nature. And Prakshananda Sarasvati, something a little unique here. We mentioned already. Yes. Mahaprabhu turned up the wattage. He turned up. Because what do Mayavadis, what's the goal of the Mayavadis? The light. Go towards the light. Where's the light? So Mahaprabhu goes, you want to see a light? Okay. I'll show you light. No plug needed. No bulb. So it's interesting. Mahaprabhu, and it's mentioned clearly, he demonstrated his effulgence. So, did he do that every other time? No. He did what the person valued. He knew what they valued, what they appreciated, what they respected, knew what it was, and connected to them. Made the connection on that basis. So again, back to the listening point. You won't know what they value unless you shut up and listen to them. And then when they speak, you go, oh, this is what they're into. Let me connect. And as devotees, we know we can connect. Because we can connect even if whatever it is. Oh yeah, that's in our movement, and that's in our scriptures, and that's what the Lord Chaitanya did. And we know what's there. We just have to first find out what it is, and then people will be so attracted. So, in summary, a good preacher is considerate and sensitive. Be sensitive to the person's. Don't just go in with the bludgeon, the sledgehammer, and say, you're in Maya, you're in nonsense. I did that in one play. I don't know if everyone here, the heavy sannyas preacher. And we did ISKCON through the ages. And we did ISKCON in this time, and then we came to ISKCON in the 70s. And we did it, and we had the sannyasi was like, you're in Maya! Shave him up now! And what about the Malaji? Shave her up too! So we weren't famous for our sensitivity. And consider the person, and will I leave them hurt? Will I leave them in a devastated state? I'm going to say the truth to them. You're attached. You're suffering. You're miserable. Your life is going nowhere. You're going to die and leave out. Yeah, that's what we say that. Will you leave a person feeling, God, that was such a nice person. I so enjoyed that. God, I loved hearing how miserable my life is. Brahma bhuvana loka puna abuna loka. From the topmost to the bottom is misery, repeated birth and death. Great. I so enjoyed that. I don't think so. Some, maybe some rare cases. But that's why we're not as big as we would like to be, because we don't create the sukriti in the person. We reach out. Maybe somebody has. In the previous life, they're picking up. Fine. You're suffering. Yeah, I'm suffering. Here's a book. Great. Kija. That happens. But it's very minimal. Very minimal. We have to create in the people the sukriti by our consideration, sensitivity, affection and respectful. Everyone just, you care about me? Really? And you don't want anything from me? Well, I want you to take the book and give me some money. No, the people who generally feel you're out, and this is why Sheshwar, of course, has become the king of being there for the person. Be there for them. Don't be there for your goal and what you want to achieve. Be there for that person. Be affectionate and be respectful. Shut up and listen. You have it all. You know it all. And I remember, I went through, when we started this preaching program in Inishrath, a lake isle retreat, bring people for yoga and vegetarian cooking courses. Nice, simple, soft preaching. And first we were doing these, I would on a Saturday afternoon do this group meeting with them. And it was okay, and people were nice. People are nice and respectful. But after a while we were doing comments, and people never mentioned it. They never mentioned the talk with the brahmachari or the monk. And then I started to think, am I doing something wrong? So yes, I'm sitting there like I am now, proselytizing. But you're sadhus, you're devotees, you've come to be proselytized to. You come with that, so It works in this context. People don't come for it. That doesn't work. You can't do the same thing. You can't sit there but saying, I know all the answers. So then I had to completely untrain myself from the way I've been trained ISKCON for, at that point, 15, 17 years, and just sit down and listen to them and be one of the group. And what do you think in that point? And what do you think in that point? Oh, okay. And then at some point they ask me what I think. Oh, yeah, well, yeah, I think this. And suddenly that part of the retreat increased because I had to learn to not think I'm right and they're wrong, or I know all the answers. And people pick up on it and humble and relevant. Practice, be relevant, do what they appreciate and do what they value, and of course always be humble. So I quickly summarize some conclusions. Lord Chaitanya, while boldly defeating many opponents, always did so after establishing respect and some connection. Being humble is not a focus on our state, but on clearly establishing respect for the person we are dealing with. And this word humble, I think in the previous class, what is humility? We always tend to think humility is going around like, yes, Prabhu, and yes, Hare Krishna, yes, I'm so full, yes. That's very superficial, it looks the part, so we do it. But humility is shutting your mind up, putting your own opinion aside and listening to somebody. That's humble. When you're not so convinced that, even with devotees, now let's bring the context of devotees, and this is a huge thing, when devotees make some point and we're disagreeing with them, and we're not even listening to them, because we're thinking, I know better than them. It's very hard, because we're attached to this body, we're attached to our mind, and we're desperately attached to our own intelligence. We're convinced, and when somebody tells us something different, we have a hard time. So humility is to be disciplined in our mind enough so we listen, and that's humble. People appreciate it. And before Lord Chaitanya crushes pride, he makes sure they're in a good a state as possible, making them feel secure. Some anesthesia before the operation. So there's so many medicines we have to give people, but if we just start throwing down the penicillin and this medicine, that medicine, not thinking maybe they're not ready for this. But yeah, we know it's true. This medicine is good for you. It will fix you. It will heal you. But if the patient's not ready for it, or not asking for it, you'll make them more sick. You'll make them more sick. Unless you, like the doctor, first get a prescription, find out what their actual problem is, and then you can prescribe medicine. Oh, you should chant more, you should think like this, or whatever it is. But instead of just throwing all the whole medicine cabinet down the person's throat, which we tend to do to the non-devotees and tend to do it also to each other. We tend to do it to each other. So make sure the person's ready for it, and like that. Okay, that was the main. So it is 10 o'clock, and people can. So please feel free to leave if you have other activities. But I just want, there's one thing in going through that preparation of that material, something came up to me that I hadn't seen before, and so I just thought I want to squeeze it in. Lord Chaitanya's anger. So I just gave a whole talk on respect and patience and culture and sensitivity, right? So is there a role for this? When do we hear about Lord Chaitanya's anger? Okay, and the Dvaitacharya, he dragged him in the Vyasasan, dragged him in the backyard, and punched the living daylights out of him. I mean, really, when you read in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, it's really scary. It's like punch and punch and punch, until Mother Sita, Lord Sita Devi, Dvaitacharya's wife, begged Mahaprabhu, please stop, you're killing him. He's an old man, you're killing him. So yes, Lord Chaitanya was angry because he was speaking, I think, the point here. Yes, Jagannatha Pandit, he got upset when Jagannatha Pandit preached to Sanat Goswami, tell him Sanat Goswami was distressed about his body, and I'm sore, Mahaprabhu was bracing me, what should I do? And Jagannatha, you should go to Vrindavan, then that way you can, Mahaprabhu won't do this. Oh no, Sanat Goswami, humble devotee, that's a good idea. Told it to Mahaprabhu, Mahaprabhu said, what? Who is this Jaga? You are his senior, he's preaching to you? Yes, very good. Something else, quickly? Oh, Chudha Haridas, yes, Chudha Haridas. So, and that's, of course, one of the most, again, always the most frightening and most challenging. Yes, Mahaprabhu rejected Chudha Haridas for, and even then what? He went to a house that was wrong, or he glanced at the lady briefly. What was wrong? Very, 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 very subtle. But Mahaprabhu said, that's it. He's a hypocrite. And for the rest of his life, for one whole year, he never, and yes, very heavy. And of course, Pandru, quick.
Lord Chaitanya, he was advised to leave Jagannath Puri by, I think it was, and Lord Chaitanya was very angry because he said, you had the audacity to send him.
That's the Sanat Goswami, and that's Jagannatha Pandit who spoke to Sanat Goswami and tell you, how dare you speak to Sanat Goswami? Jamasu? Jagannatha, yes, because Jagannatha has been probably the most famous. So, of course, I thought Jagannatha definitely famous. Junior Haridas, we mentioned, and the Dwaitachari's bogus preaching. Another one in the youth, Gopal Chapala. Gopal Chapala was the one who put the paraphernalia outside Srivas Pandit's house, the Durga worship, and Srivas Pandit comes out and sees it and goes, oh, very good. Everybody come see. Now, you come see how I'm not a real devotee. I mean, when I hear that passage, it always cuts. Not only does he not deny it and defend himself. When we're accused, we don't like it. If we're guilty, we don't like it. If we're accused and we're not even guilty of it, it's, how dare you? I'm not guilty of that. And Srivas Pandit not only didn't do that, he actually... So Gopal Chapla then got leprosy, and he went to Mahaprabhu begging forgiveness. Mahaprabhu said, get out of here. For millions of births, you will not be saved until you beg forgiveness to Srivas. And that was the previous topic we have about how when you offend the devotee, you can only get it by going to the devotee. But still, Krishna, he won't forgive you, but he'll give you advice what to do. Krishna will never leave you hanging. Lord Nanda breaking the danda. Yes.
Case of Kashmir, actually, nobody, the son Kazi, because he appeared very peaceful when he was at a talk with the night before.
Oh, yes.
About the Shingadev, and he showed his anger when
Yes. So, of course, when Mahaprabhu, well, I think there are two separate moments. When Lord Chaitanya first heard about Chankazi banning the Sankirtan, he was very angry. And a little prior to that, Lord Chaitanya also one day spontaneously in the mood of Lord Nrsingadev and running to the streets, roaring like Lord Nrsingadev. And then when he came down, he said, what just happened? And the devotee said, well, you ran like Lord Nrsingadev to the streets. And all the devotees and everybody ran in fear. And Mahaprabhu was very, he felt, I shouldn't do that. I don't want people to fear me. So, yeah, it's interesting. He regretted that angry state. This is nice. After the Gaudiya devotee drank the water from Mahaprabhu's feet and cleaned the Gondicha temple, he chastises Nityananda or Dvaitacharya? No, because your devotee, your Gaudiya devotee, in the temple in front of the Lord, he's taking the feet and drinking it. That is so bad. Kick him out. And he was kicked out of the temple. So Mahaprabhu was not happy. With Maharaj Prachaparuja, this is a whole constant pastime. Mahaprabhu Prachaparuja wanted to get to see Mahaprabhu, and because this goes over like 4 or 5 chapters again, little endeavor, and then Maharaj Prachaparuja does what's the best thing. He asks the devotees, you go to Lord and ask him to see me. So they do. And the Lord Nityananda, Dvaitacharya, Sarvabhaumacharya, they all go. And how does Mahaprabhu respond? I'm going to go. If you keep asking me this, I'm leaving. It's very interesting. He's very angry. He gets very upset. And then eventually when Mahaprabhu falls in ecstasy and the devotees have arranged and Maharaj Prachaparuja picks him up, Mahaprabhu comes out of his ecstasy and sees the king is touching me. It's the king. And he's externally angry. Gadadhar Pandit for breaking his vows. Gadadhar Pandit took a vow to never leave Jagannath Puri and to always worship Gopinath. And Mahaprabhu left to go to Vrindavan. Gadadhar Pandit went after him and Mahaprabhu said, what are you doing? This is wrong. Gopinath Patinathi, we mentioned, we just heard it in the recent chapter, and Jagannatha Pandit. What is the key thing you see in this list? What is the Jagannatha may be a little thing, but what is the very common, obvious thread through all this list? They're all the close associates. They're all not just devotees, they're intimate associates. Mahaprabhu didn't get angry in principle. Like, did he get angry at Sarvabhaumacharya? No, after Sarvabhaumacharya insulted him, you're too young. at Prakshana Sarasvati was criticizing behind his back? No. And the worst case, Mahaprabhu should have got angry was with Ramachandra Puri. Look, I see the crumbs here. See, at night, you're secretly eating sweets in your room. And Mahaprabhu, yes, you're right. No anger. And then, in general, there's many other instances where Mahaprabhu could have got angry. He never got angry at people who are ignorant or innocent or who you don't expect more from. He only did it with his devotees. And this is the point in Sutaprabhu's point about the appreciation and the correction. This is how he trained his devotees. And of course, and especially for me, and there's only one devotee I know who did this so expertly and who used anger as a training tool was His Grace Sri Bhuvana Prabhu. I mean, I've never seen somebody who got angry so often, and yet by doing it, molded and shaped the devotees into devotees that could stay in Krishna consciousness. So expert, because it was done lovingly. And of course, we have so many passages with Srila Prabhupada doing it with his intimate associates. Again, Prabhupada only did it generally with those he knew he could take it. So of course, I'm not advocating here that, what's he saying? We all start going around getting angry at each other. Hey, Prabhu! No, we do it in the context of the rest of the talk. Considerate and sensitive, respectful and listening and shutting up. But there is a role for it. It has a role. Mahaprabhu did it. And it's very powerful too. And it really, it stays with you. I can still remember the times Sri Prabhu got angry at me. I can still remember them. And how it stuck with me as a samskar of how you should behave as a devotee. Or try to, at least. So let me finish, Maji. So again, it's a tool, and we know that when, like when Srila Prabhupada used it, he would use it, and like this, straight away it was gone. So you don't become used by it. You don't become angry, you use it. Mahaprabhu used it with his devotees. And so again, I was thinking, well, Syamananda, what are you trying to say here? It was just something I hadn't seen before. That it's some. So I guess on the positive point is that you should never get angry at a guest or a devotee. Sometimes people come in like they walk in temple with their shoes. Oh, what are you doing? They don't know. Never, ever. I mean, they don't know, and they're ignorant. You get ignorant. You get angry at those who do know better and don't follow the etiquette, like Jagannatha Pandit or Gadadhar Pandit or Gopachal, and even Jagan Madai. I'll shut up now on this point. We hear Jagan Madai, their terrible behavior, right? They were doing criminal things, burning down houses, raping people. Very, 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 very bad. But we don't hear Mahaprabhu's anger then. Mahaprabhu got angry when? When they Vaishnav Aparad. When they committed a Vaishnav Aparad to Lord Chaitanya's dearest associate, then he lost it. Then he got angry, and it worked. It worked, So it is something to protect our culture, and this is a point Tribune Prabhu said, we're all too attached to being nice. So again, let's be nice, but it can also be attached when necessary. We have to. It is a requirement, but again, to be used in context of all the other elements too. Okay, so I'll stop there. So. Of course, anybody again, very please feel free to leave as you can, but has anybody any comments on the topics? And if you could, because we are very late, so keep it very concise.
Yes, but Chota Haridas, he committed suicide.
Yes, so Mahaprabhu, and of course he committed suicide, but we know that the conclusion of the pastime, he stayed in his spiritual body singing to Lord Chaitanya. Yes, because Lord Chaitanya wanted so much to establish the etiquette that a sannyasi cannot be guilty of any hypocrisy. So he used his intimate devotee. Only the intimate devotee would be used in such a tool. And to teach us for the rest of time that this is how you should behave. Yeah, so very good. Yes, Puratatvaru.
Nice and clear presentation. Things came to my mind. Sarvabhauma Acharya was preaching to Gochataya. Gochataya was hearing for 7 days. But like for 7 days to hear Mayavad philosophy, it can be done by God.
Yeah.
It will not be polluted. But if we have to hear 7 hours from a person,
Yeah.
then our mind, or even 7 minutes.
That's true, and Mahaprabhu says that a lot. We should never hear from the Sarakiya Bhasya, the commentary of the Mayavadi. But if this is the point of preaching. If we're preaching and we're doing it in a way to give a person respect, then we are guaranteed to be protected by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by Krishna, so that won't be affecting us. If we are, I'm going to listen now, they're going to speak such nonsense, which is poisonous. But if I'm doing it, so I hear them out and I value what they say and I find out what they're thinking and I show them that basic courtesy, that mentality, Krishna will appreciate it, and then we will be protected. And we need to be. If not protected when we're preaching, we'll be finished. That's why we should never associate with non-devotee, but we do. But if our motivation is clear and our intention is clear, we will be nicely protected. So it won't affect us that. But we have to be clear. If we're not clear in our intention, and if we're like, oh, that's a good point. Oh, that's a good point. Oh, then we. So we have to be clear, and then we will be protected. And that's how that's the only way a devotee survives, knowing and be protected by Lord Chaitanya. And he will do it 100% if we're clear in our motivation and intention. Okay, thank you. Okay, stop there. So I wish everybody a nice continuation on our Gaura Purnima day, meditating, singing, praying, chanting for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The next thing on the schedule is at 11 o'clock. We have nice bhajans by various devotees. So please, everybody come for that. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Shri Gaura Nitai ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Go Premanandi.